this group for pause. When I first had this meeting at the beginning of the year, we couldn't fit in the room that I chose. So many people were interested in being proactive and getting this plan together. So following from this, we formed a smaller group, and so the document that you've been presented with is sort of this subgroup. And I just wanted to thank Lisa Bernard, a parent, Kathy Carmody, Claudia Crocker, myself, Chris Davis, Elizabeth Emnett, Officer Thomas Hatch from North Reading Police Department, Tabitha Hydorn, AJ LaPrette, the assistant principal at the high school, Maria McBride, Jolene Pepper, and Kathleen Willis is forming sort of the subgroup that really wrote the first draft. You're seeing about the fifth draft of what this is, and Superintendent Willis especially I want to thank for her. She's very, very good with comments, punctuation, alignment. She's been great in helping me really get this to where it is tonight. So the PowerPoint, I just want to give you just an overview of our goals for the district. Working to create the bullying prevention intervention plan. Our deadline for submission is December 31st, 2010. So much of what we're talking about is our overall plan that we're submitting and the process for that. Overall for the district, evaluating, adopting, implementing this curriculum at all grade levels, which is a part of our plan. Developing the procedures for investigating and responding to bullying and cyberbullying. Really a tricky there is, just making sure we have a procedure in place that we will follow and that we're all comfortable following every single time, because that's what we need to make sure when we start an investigation, move to discipline, and any notification that we're following the same procedure and documenting that. Working closely with other public agencies, including law enforcement, to respond to incidents of bullying, and communicating with parents of students who are aggressors and targets to provide support. So these are all the components of our plan. The PAWS group, as I mentioned, it stands for Public Awareness and Understanding of Social Education. And it's really, I think its formation speaks to the idea in North Reading that this isn't just about bullying. A lot of it's similar to harassment. A lot of it's similar to many other things that we're doing in our curriculum anyway, and trying to increase our positive climate and school culture, many of the things that we talked about earlier, and that's really what this group stands for. Some important dates. I just want to run through these quickly. We started this school year with our first PAWS meeting in September 21st. The subgroup met on the 6th at the suggestion of a principal to sort of get a real nice draft going. October 19th, we got some feedback on the draft from the larger PAWS group. We met at Administrative Council, got feedback. The school committee saw the first reading on the 25th. Tonight would be the second committee meeting. Tomorrow we would take any suggestions from tonight back to the larger group. We also, I just wanted to mention too, Ms. Ericetti has been a member of our PAWS group, which has been great to get feedback all along the way from folks on school committee as well. The public comment period would begin on the 15th. This is required as a part of the legislation. And what we wanted to do was not only post it on the website, which is a place for folks in the community to read and respond, but also to have a public forum. This will serve as sort of a PAWS meeting, but also a public forum for people to actually come to the middle school and meet with members of the PAWS group to discuss the plan, to ask how we're approaching this, and any questions or comments that folks may have. That would be on November 30th. December 1st would be the end of the public comment period, and then we would submit by the 31st. And right at the beginning of the next calendar year, January 3rd, as Mr. Bernard mentioned, we have district-wide professional development with Dr. Englander coming in from the Massachusetts Aggression Reduction Center. The main points of employee responsibilities I pulled out here. We want to make sure all employees read and understand this plan, that they read and understand the definitions of bullying, cyberbullying, and hostile environment, and that they immediately report any conduct that may be bullying or retaliation. So those are our keys. And I broke it down a little bit more to staff. Some keys here: that this law extends to the bus stops and on school buses, in the cafeteria lines, through the use of technology or an electronic device not owned, leased, or used by school, if the acts create a hostile environment at school. So this means not only when we talk about employees, it's not just our teachers and paraprofessionals, it's also our cafeteria workers, our bus drivers, and also our custodial staff. So we're working with all of those folks, and we're now arranging to have some professional development to explain the plan, the responsibilities, and how to identify and identify these instances in school and what it looks like. For teachers, Obviously, it's about engaging in professional development, which they've already been so wonderful at doing, and just continuing with that. Recognizing signs of bullying and retaliation. Implementing this anti-bullying curriculum, which we have different at each grade level. We're working in groups with the PAWS group to determine the best curriculum for those grade levels. To realize the importance of their voice as teachers in this process. And this touches on what we talked about in the last presentation there, to share positive as well as negative news with parents and students. And the reason I have that in there is just that idea that constant communication, it's time consuming and challenging, but to always, reach out and share positive and negative news, that creates a climate where people are more comfortable coming forward and reporting because they know that relationship has been established. For the administration, to always address this topic at faculty meetings with students and with parents, to follow the procedures for the investigation, discipline, and notification, and to revisit the plan, including the procedures frequently. So that brings us to the presentation itself. Everyone, I believe, has the document. I just wanted to speak quickly to it and then any questions that we may have about it. We were given guidelines from the state of Massachusetts as a template, but it really was wide open to interpretation. A lot of this work had to be adjusted. It wasn't something you could just fill in the blanks. It really took a lot of input. So that group that met on October 6th, each group of 2 or 3 teachers and staff members and community members and Officer Hatch also took a section and divided this up. And each fleshed out one of these sections. When the superintendent and I sat down, we rearranged the order from the template a little bit. We really started off with leadership, just to explain the entire process. We then started with the definitions, thinking that people right up front are looking to make sure that they understand these terms that we use throughout the rest. We then wanted to talk about the proactive piece. So we talked about the prohibition against bullying and retaliation, which is sort of the policy for the district. But then the training and professional development, it all starts there. Collaboration with families, and the academic and non-academic activities, which is really our teaching. Again, being proactive so that we can educate our students first and foremost and create that climate so that this doesn't happen. However, an incident may occur, so then we have our procedures for reporting and responding to bullying and retaliation. Very clear. We borrowed from some other exemplars in the state that we've used and shared. Really clear delineation of steps, step 1, step 2, step 3, so that it's very clear and can be followed by the principal or designee when reporting. Finally, the access to resources and services. This is really for if there is a situation with a target and aggressor, the way we deal with those folks and get them the support that they need. And finally, just some relationships to other laws. The appendix would be the forms that we're proposing that we would use when there is a report that comes forward. So those two there's one form. The first form is the form that would be filled out as the report is taken and the investigation begins. And the second form is a follow-up report, which we figured was very important a few weeks after the incident, in a reasonable amount of time we stated for the principal or designee to revisit to make sure that the situation has improved, and if not, if further action needs to be taken. Any questions about the draft? Just to clarify too, this draft is, if it were to be approved, I believe then we would post this for comment after this time. So this is not the official, it is a work in progress constantly that we're looking at for submission in December. So.
I found a couple of minor errors, and I'll just pass it
Absolutely.
on to you. But there's one, on page 15, I was a little confused. It seems like, is there something missing between the third paragraph that starts at the building level and then the fourth paragraph that says at the IEP meeting? Because there's no mention of IEP at all. And it just seems like there's either a transition missing or some kind of disconnect between those two paragraphs. And maybe I'm just not reading it correctly, but we talk about leadership teams within the building, and then it says at the IEP meeting, and that kind of comes out of the blue. I don't know if there needs to be some other explanation in there or not.
And we may need to do that. A lot of this corresponds, and I can see the connection because it corresponds to things in the other document. There's a specific piece that needs to address elements of a student's IEP if their social skills are affected by, and they may need some special attention.
Mm-hmm.
And this corresponds to that, but once you've removed those letters and things, I can see where a transition would be needed there. This section was the folks that worked on this are fantastic. They did a really, really nice job. We actually trimmed it down a little bit, so maybe we took something out that needs to go back in.
It might just be a sentence that introduces the whole topic of IEPs.
Sure.
And then it gets right into at the IEPT meeting. But that was, and the other few things I have in mind, I'll just pass it on and you can make the corrections.
Thank you.
But I thought overall it was, it's comprehensive. I like the fact that it spells out the 3 steps in terms of assessing and the situation and dealing with the situation, and also the professional development, which I think is obviously a key here. Any other questions or comments?
Looks to me like it covers the requirements that we need to cover and the things we need to cover, and does it well for our town, and looks like we're gonna meet the schedule.
I'd also just like to point out that when Patrick and I did take a look at pulling this document together and reordering, we looked very carefully at the draft policy that the school committee is currently in the process of reading and approving, so that it mirrored some of the more specific criteria that had been laid out in the policy, as opposed to the generalities that have been laid out by the state. So our plan is actually more restrictive in some places than what the state is saying we need to do. But we wanted to make sure that the policy was reflected.
Absolutely. Thank you.
I also want to thank all the PAWS committee members for the time put in and the time they'll put in going forward. It's obviously incredibly important to the district to have this plan in place, so appreciate all their help.
What a good job.
Anything else? Great.
All right,
Thanks, Patrick.
folks.
Touch base tomorrow.
Do you hear about this? Race to nowhere, those were just those presentations that are gonna be sold on. You can read about them.
I think that concludes our multimedia show for tonight.
I hope so.
Oh, look at,
Honestly.
the lights go off and look what happens, they come back on.
What do you mean? I've been here
Mr. Vanessa is here.
I was here the whole time.
Were you?
Yeah.
Oh, you were just, I didn't see you in the dark.
I was here the whole time.
Great.
Okay.
All right, let me see if I can find where we are.
Agenda.
Yeah.
You wanna go back to continued business?
Yeah, actually, yeah, we'll go back to, we're at the second reading of the revised bullying policy, and actually, prior to the meeting, Mr. Kashakji and Ms. Willis and I were discussing the fact that there is no requirement for us to read entire policies when we have first and second readings.
But you
I
enjoy it.
would like to hear that again, to be honest with you. I really would.
Especially when they're 4 pages long and when they're amended policies, which the bullying policy is. I think at future meetings, if we have brand-new policies, we would do a full reading in the first time through. But what the reading is really for is for the members to read it when they have it presented to them in their packets.
Well, for the record, I'm a little disappointed, but
That I won't be reading. So I won't be reading the full policy tonight. This is the second reading of the new or amended bullying policy, GAAC. And however, Ms. Willis will provide us with the changes that have been made between the first and second reading. And then I will ask any members for comments or questions, and then from there, we will have a motion to approve the policy. Kathy?
Okay. First paragraph, the second sentence, we decided to omit the clause, "The committee believes that," and we began that second sentence with "a safe and civil environment."
Right.
So it reads, "A safe and civil environment in school is necessary for students to learn and achieve high academic standards."
Right.
That's the only change in that paragraph. The only change in the second paragraph was the second, or the third to the last line ends with the phrase "school responses," and we inserted a comma there because we're listing particular prevention and education efforts. Then if you go under definitions, under bullying, number 2, we were asked to insert herself after himself and her after his. So it reads himself/herself, his/her property. That's it on that page.